We're here with Corey LaJoie, third generation stock car racer, veteran of NASCAR and ARCA. How you doing today, Corey?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me out.
All right. For people who don't know, can you explain how physically demanding it is to race a car? You may be sitting the whole time, but your body is working in ways that most people have no idea.
Well, that's what the common misconception is, that we're just sitting around, driving around in circles for 4 hours. But it's pretty tough on your body. The cockpits get anywhere from 120 to 140 degrees, depending on how hot it is outside. So as you can, that cooks me to about a nice medium rare after about 3 hours. So that's tough, man. Once your body temperature gets up, it's hard to control your breathing. So I've had to change some of my fitness and the way I train to kind of combat that a little bit, because when you get in those midsummer months and it's super hot, it's just hard to keep your heart rate down.
You know how much body fluid you lose during a race?
Yeah, I've lost anywhere from 8 to 12 pounds during a race. So yeah, you got to keep, even when you're intaking fluids, you're still sweating out a ton. So that's good overall, because you want your car as light as possible. But if you're dehydrated by the end of that thing, then obviously you're not going to have as much mental clarity as the next guy.
What kind of training do race car drivers do? What muscles do they need to develop?
Well, everybody kind of does their own deal. You know, some guys like riding bikes, some guys swim, some guys run. I kind of do a little bit of a mix of all of them, because I just don't think that getting stuck to the same training regimen the entire time is probably good for what we're trying to do. But obviously some shoulder strength and core stability is huge.
For controlling the wheel?
Yeah, and combating the forces that are against us, right? Because your core gets lit up, and your obliques and your QLs are taking a lot of the brunt of those 2 Gs of vertical and lateral forces that we have on the 30 degrees or so bank corners that we're on. So yeah, just working all those muscles laterally and unilaterally with different sorts of carries and some Olympic lifting. Not a whole lot, but a little Olympic lifting just to get a good strong base is kind of what I've leaned towards.
So what's a typical workout for you, if you could give us an example of a day?
It's kind of like a mix of a CrossFit workout. I like some of the lifting of that, but I like a lot of the body weight stuff too, and I do use a lot of the Onnit kettlebells and maces. So that's gets pretty much all those inner core muscles fired up that you wouldn't normally do that in a normal Olympic lifting. So I use pretty much all the Onnit kettlebells, from the small ones to the big ones. And that big old mace with like the 4 faces on it, that sucker kicks my butt a lot of the time. So I try to mix it up a little bit and keep it fun.
What do you use the mace for?
I try to make it so I look like the guys on your Instagram doing it, but I definitely don't look like that.
I mean, what exercises do you use with it?
Just some sort of a flow, I guess you could call it that. I definitely wouldn't put it on camera and put it on your Instagram page, because it's probably not as clean as some of the other guys that are doing it. But it definitely gets the cores and the shoulders fired up more so than anything, and that's the 2 areas that get lit up on me throughout the course of 500 miles quite often.
When you're rounding those bends and absorbing those G-forces, like you said, do you find that one side of your body is getting more developed than other, or is there an imbalance there?
There's definitely an imbalance, because that's the joke, right? We always go in circles, and we're always going left. So your left side of your neck and your left side rector and your obliques get stronger than your right. There's 3 or 4 road course races where we do turn right. So you'll see that those areas give out way quicker than your left, just because you're used to going left for 30 weekends out of the year, and then the couple you go to the right, you're like, oh dang, I need to even them back up a little bit. So obviously you don't want to be out of balance, but sometimes I lean towards working the right side 1 or 2 or 3 extra reps, depending on what it is, just to get a little more strength in those.
Do you have any back issues from all this for so many years?
Man, I have to get my QLs worked on a lot with dry needling and cupping and stuff like that. And a lot of just preventative rehab, I guess, because by the time it gets blown up on Sunday throughout the course of the race, try to recover Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then you're back in the car on Friday. So it just keeps repeating, and you don't really get a time to recoup. That's why at the end of the year, everybody's backs are getting a little tight, and your neck's getting a little tight. So by Thanksgiving, you're ready to have a couple months off and regroup a little bit.
How do you train for endurance?
The Aerodyne bike's really good. I lean towards more just a short sprint work, like lactate stuff. I'm not much of an endurance guy. I probably wouldn't say that my motor's astronomically more than the next guy. I like doing a lot more sprint work and building up just because throughout the course of the race, you'll have times where it's almost a sprint, right? Like there's a short run and you got new tires and you really have to pull the belts down and get after it. Your heart rate will spike 15, 20 more beats per minute than it would be during when you're kind of pacing yourself throughout the course of the early run. But towards the end of the race, when you got to get after it, it's more like a sprint, and you're in it for sometimes 20 to 25 minutes straight of what would be almost like a 90% effort on an aerodyne bike.
So proper fitness and nutrition is kind of a new concept in some sports like golf that weren't considered, super physical for a long time. What percentage of stock car drivers do you think are cognizant of that?
It's probably about the same shift of thinking like it was in golf, because late 90s, early 2000s, about half the guys would probably what you would be considered overweight, probably 25, 30 pounds over, just because if some guys just call it, race strong, right? Like if you're okay to do it for 500 miles and not fall out of the seat, then you're in good enough shape. But once you get a guy like Jimmy Johnson who comes and really takes his fitness serious and his diet fitness serious as well. So, and then he goes and wins 7 championships. Everybody's like, oh hell, we got to take this serious. We're going to keeps getting our butt smoked by this guy. So obviously Jimmy's he's an idol of mine, just the way he represents the sport and the success he had and the caliber of a driver he is. So I try to do some of the things he does and take the diet and the fitness stuff really serious.
Apart from what you've said about your back, do you have any racing injuries or anything from accidents you've been in?
Luckily, man, just 1 or 2 concussions here or there over probably the course of, 6, 7 years. I've really been doing it as a career. But luckily, the cars, NASCAR does a good job of keeping those cars safe. And if you do get in a big wreck, I actually was in a big wreck yesterday at Texas, and luckily I was able to walk away with no bumps and bruises. My knee hit the dashboard a little bit from my limbs flailing around when I hit the fence at 160, but it was good enough to get a little bit of sweat in here at the Onnit gym.
Before we turned the camera on, you were telling us about that wreck and taking your hands off the steering wheel. What was the strategy there?
Man, it's, as a driver, you think that you're in control, even when up to the point of impact. If you always feel like you have control of the thing, and you never want to admit that you're about to wreck. But I got a little bit of damage earlier in the race, and my guys tried to fix it, and we still had a little bit of a tire rub, and we were just hoping that it wasn't going to puncture the tire, and it ultimately did, and that thing swapped 180 degrees on me, and by then when it turns around backwards, obviously you don't have any control of it. So as I was sliding backwards, I'm like, oh shit, I'm about to completely knock the wall down. So I just let go of the wheel, because sometimes the wheel will snap on you and it'll break your wrist sometimes, or catch a finger inside one of the spokes. So I just rode it out and put my head up against the headrest, like, oh man, it's gonna hurt.
And hope for the best.
Pow! And then it comes a rest and you hop out and take it on the chin and try to go again next week.
How does it feel being in a crash? Does everything kind of slow down? Are you very aware of it, or is it ethereal?
It's an eerie quietness, right before you wreck, and then you just completely knock the wall down. Luckily, I haven't been in a whole lot of wrecks this year, or even in the last couple of years. Any real big ones, you kind of get in brushes and hit the wall a little bit, but it's rare you hit the wall with somewhere between 70 and 100 G's. Those are the ones that really ring your bell, and that was one of the ones that rung my bell pretty decent yesterday. But I think having a good, a flexible foundation of fitness, I think it also helps absorb some of that impact.
Are your friends and family worried sick every time you go out to race? Do they have any rituals?
Yeah, my wife obviously is nervous anytime I go out there, but she also knows that the cars are safe, and generally speaking, something would have to crazily happen for me to get hurt. So luckily, I picked a profession to where, unlike Indy cars and those open wheel guys, those guys are literally dodging death anytime they jump in one of those cars. So luckily, stock cars are a little more safer form of motorsports than those.
Do you do any kind of mental training, any reaction drills or anything for eyesight?
Yeah, so I do a lot of stuff on like the balance, like with the Basu ball, or exercise ball with different colored like racket balls or tennis balls, different color stuff. Just pick different color hands, so they bounce off the wall, and just try to keep balance while you're trying to distinguish what color and what hand. So keeps the brain working and all that. So we'll change some of that stuff up, and with the Synaptip glasses, that the lenses flick on and off to keep your reaction time even quicker than that. So I work with that a couple of times a week just to keep that stuff fresh. But yeah, that's a different level of training that I've incorporated over the last 6 or so months that I've noticed a difference.
And that sort of simulates other cars racing by you on the track?
Well, when you're going 200 miles an hour, your reflexes have to be pretty quick, and sometimes you have to make split-second decisions that can change the course of your day. So I would rather be more prepared than less in that little area of just training.
Do you take any supplements before, during, or after a race?
Yeah, so I'd take Alpha Brain before. I pretty much take that every morning anyways through the Total Human Optimization packet. I love those little things with the krill oil and all that good stuff. So I'll take that in the morning, and then throughout the course of the race, I've been taking the mineral electrolytes. They'll put that in my water bottle. I'll switch that out 4 or 5 times.
To get your fluid back up?
Yep, and I haven't really found out, it's the second race of the day is literally when you race from getting the race finished, and then you go to the airport because all the NASCAR guys fly out of the same airport. So, and then you jump in a charter jet and go home. So that is pretty convenient. I haven't really found a post race drink or meal that really hits home yet. So I got to talk to the people in the other room to get me fixed up with that. But during the race, that mineral electrolyte stuff really keeps me going, and I never feel tired or dehydrated when I'm drinking that stuff regularly.
Do you meditate or do any kind of training that enhances a sense of calm?
That's a good question. I work with a sports psychologist a little bit, just to change some of the ways I've thought about leading into the race on how to more or less lock in. And the thing that's unique about NASCAR is that fans can come up to the driver literally 5 minutes before the race. So you're always meeting sponsors and taking pictures, and then you literally jump in the car and you're going 10 minutes later. So I just had to do a lot of training with just either visualization or certain cues that I do that, once I put my helmet on, there's no more distraction. There's no more talking besides what the information throughout the race needs to be relayed. So it took a little bit of experience and some outsider ideas to kind of figure out a ritual from more or less, from the locked timetable of the driver's meeting 2 hours later with all the sponsor meet and greets and all that good stuff until race time to really iron that out.
So when you do the visualization drill, what are you seeing in your head?
Just different situations play out and how you'd react. There's different, you can't really visualize the million different ways things are going to play out, but just situations that you've been in before and what you would change if you got in that position again. So a lot of that comes with experience that I'm gaining slowly but surely. And it's been noticeable just applying that and visualizing, a positive result as opposed to, if you think, don't hit the wall, don't hit the wall, don't hit the wall. Well, naturally you're going to hit the wall, right? That's just human nature and how it works. So just changing and shifting that focus a little bit on visualizing the positive outcomes of what could happen.
So your father and grandfather were racers. What kind of mentality does one have to be successful in the sport? Is it about nerve? Is it eyesight and reflexes? What are the genetic traits too? I
don't know, man. It's just, I'm learning that as I go. I think what goes kind of unsaid is, the grittiness that you have to keep sticking around and keep, the open mindset of always building and growing and learning through experience. It's easy to get in that fixed mindset of thinking that you're good enough for things that you've learned. You've learned enough stuff. So, having an open mindset on being, allowing yourself to make mistakes, but learn from that and not make those mistakes again is tough to kind of beat your pride down and ego down enough to where you start accepting that and really start making some gains.
Have you ever felt like you have a shadow to escape due to their success? And what do you need to get out of that shadow?
Yeah, so my dad had a lot of success in NASCAR. My grandfather, he was more of like a hobby guy. He was really successful in the Northeast, but never really pursued a career at it. It was more of a hobby. And then Dad made a living doing it. So I feel like I've lived in my dad's shadow. I was always Randy LaJoie's son, right? But now I feel like I've made kind of that turn over the last 12 to 16 months of what I've been able to do on track and off track in my NASCAR career. That I'm kind of paving my own way. So that's been a lot of fun to kind of carry the LaJoie flag and not necessarily be Randy LaJoie's son as often. It's just, Corey LaJoie, the racer. And I know that both my grandfather and my dad are proud of that because, Dad had the opportunity to go cup racing but chose not to because he wanted to invest the time with me and my little brother when we were younger with, between 5 and 10 to 12. He could have been racing on Sundays, but he chose to stay home and race go-karts with us or just hang out and build into us. So I think me being out there on Sundays just validates to Dad that he made the right choice.
What would be ultimate success for you in the sport?
Obviously, the wins and championships are quantifiable as success, but I think just, off the track too, I want to do it the right way. I want to be a good ambassador for the partners that I'm representing. And obviously I want to win a race. I've won every level I've been in my career up until here. So it's just a matter about getting surrounded by a good winning, capable team, and then just making the most. And would I consider a success if I don't win a race? Probably so, just from, there's not very many people with the opportunity to, start 3 Daytona 500s, and line up and have some good days like I've had. But ultimately, right, the competitor in me wants to go compete for wins and championships one day.
What can regular guys do to make their cars faster?
A lot of the times the driver is the weakest link in any car that you have. So, I don't know, man. I'm not one of those that drive super fast on the road because, there's more dangers on the road than there is on a racetrack, really, even though we race inches apart from each other at 200 miles an hour. When you're going 45 miles an hour next to somebody that's on their cell phone like this, that's a hell of a lot more dangerous. So I don't know, man. It's the motto for oval track racing is always low, light, and left, right? Because you're making a circle, so you want to make everything low, and then you want to make everything light, and you want to put everything to the left because it just makes the car go faster. But when you're on the road, man, I would just say don't text and don't drink and drive, and just get to where you got to go in a decent time.
What tips do you have for regular guys who are NASCAR fans and hope to one day be able to race themselves?
I've been getting that question more and more, on how kids can get into the sport. And it's such an expensive sport, even at the lower levels of go-karts. But the whole esports push with gaming now on the internet or on PC is actually getting realistic enough with some different places like iRacing and even NASCAR Heat on the Xboxes and PlayStations that a kid can learn the sport on, what makes a car go and what doesn't make it go from the time they're a little kid, and it doesn't cost the parents a whole lot of money. So it's a good new avenue that's just been created over the last 2 or 3 years that people can jump in and they can race myself, right? They can race their favorite drivers. That's pretty cool. And the sport overall is really embracing that to get younger guys in the sport. And
you think that simulation is fairly representative of how it feels to really be in a race?
No, not really, but it's a lot closer than just guessing at it. iRacing software, they keep getting it better and better every year. So the simulator I have at home, I have an iRacing rig that I pretty much knock the rust off anywhere we go. But, lap times vary a little bit. Obviously, tire models and all that stuff are hard to validate. But just the overall feel of going around in a circle and what works with gas and brake is all pretty relative.
What do you love best about the car that you race?
Sometimes I hate it. It depends if we have bad weekends or not. But I don't know, man, just the opportunity to be able to do it. But, I've been doing this I'm 28 years old, so I started when I was 5. So, I've been doing it for 23 years and never thought that I'd get the opportunity to race at the highest level, especially get paid to do it. So when I get paid to do what I love, it's pretty dang cool.
Is there anything about the handling, though, or the power of that particular vehicle?
Well, there's NASCAR messes with the package with horsepower. It's always a balance of horsepower versus downforce and drag. So we don't have the most power that NASCAR's ever had. A couple years ago, we had upwards of 1,000 horsepower. So the cars were really hauling ass. But now we have a little bit less horsepower, but some more downforce. So we're going faster in the corners and slower down the straightaways, where we were going faster in the straightaways and slower in the corners. It's just a balance of what they try to do to make the cars run closer together.
And safer?
Yeah, they're probably a little bit safer because your corner entry speeds aren't quite as much. But everybody who has ever driven a race car likes the feeling of, some power to make that thing go. So, when we say we have 550 horsepower of what this one particular package is, it's still quite a bit, and it can bust the tires loose. And then we have some racetracks that we go to with close to 800. So it's all relative. It all kind of feels the same. You just adjust accordingly and try to make yours go faster than the next guy.
What kind of car do you drive day to day off the track?
It is a 2006 Lincoln pickup truck. So it's very underwhelming. I don't really care too much about what I drive. I just bought my wife a new car to make her happy. So as long as she's happy and has something nice to drive, I'm good with that. I'll drive my 2006 pickup around all day long.
So when you're driving around by yourself, you're not interested in going fast?
No, I get all that out on Sundays. Granted, I've gotten some speeding tickets. I'm like a 10 to 12 over kind of guy. Sometimes I get in some bad spots, but I'm definitely not reckless or super fast when I'm driving on the road, just because I'm able to get all that stuff out on Sundays.
When they pull you over for speeding, though, do you get out of those tickets?
Lately, I have been. I probably got pulled over 3 times and only got 1 ticket. So they're starting to recognize me a little bit more, which is a good thing. I just need to quit speeding and pay a little more attention on the road.
You just tell them, hey, I'm a trained professional.
No, man, it's sometimes they'll recognize my name on my ID or whatever. And sometimes I'll pull out the driver card, right? Like, I'm driving back from the racetrack, or I'm driving to the racetrack. I try to be respectful and apologetic for breaking the law.
Tell us why you gave up a month's salary this past summer.
Oh, man, so I started working with this charity called Samaritan's Feet. They just provide shoes to the 1.5 billion people in the world that are shoeless or have some sort of foot-borne diseases. That's the second leading cause of death in the world is foot-borne disease. I didn't know that until I started working with these guys. They're a Charlotte-based charity, so naturally it works because I'm from Charlotte too. And my wife and I signed up to be Hope Givers in their annual Hope Givers Drive. They pick 10 people across the country to kind of have this friendly competition of who can raise the most amount of money. So we signed up and we were trying to figure out ways to raise some money for these guys. And I was laying in bed one night, man. It was like this dream came up, and it was this dream of a Samaritan's Feet car. And I'm like, okay, that's great. And I'll be like, who's going to pay for it? All right. And I was trying to think of companies that can subsidize it, and just 3 or 4 guys that can come together and put this company or this charity on the car. It was at 11:30 at night, and I just felt like I'm a religious guy, so I felt like the Lord was calling me to. It was like clear as day. It was like, you're going to call your owner and see if he won't pay you for a month if he'd put Samaritan's Feet in the car. And I was laying in bed watching the ceiling fan spin, like, oh God, like that's a bad idea. Because that's a lot of money, right? Like, okay.
Can you tell us about how much that was over the course of a month?
It was about 30 grand. So you can buy some stuff with 30 grand. So, and
it's a lot of shoes, yeah.
Heck yeah, it's a lot of shoes. But so I'm laying there watching the ceiling fan spin, man, trying to like figuring out a bunch of different ways to justify not doing that. And I couldn't shake it off, couldn't go back to bed. So I called my owner up. Hey, man, this is what is on my heart. I don't know why, but let's lock this thing in for Watkins Glen. We didn't have a sponsor for it. And he's like, are you sure? And I was like, no, but let's hang up before I change my mind.